All right. I think we are about ready to begin. I want to thank everybody, say good morning to everyone, and good afternoon to everyone on the East Coast. We have another great turnout, actually a really great turnout for today's webinar, Tips and Tricks for Refining Technical Monitoring Alerts within SolMan 7.1 with our speaker, Jereme Swoboda. I'm Jake Eisbart, part of the NIMBL marketing team. A little bit about NIMBL. We are SAP technologists and SAP ecosystem thought leaders. Our consulting business, which is 50% of our work, delivers SAP projects, both technical and functional, while our Denver-based SAP managed services, which is the other 50%, supports both Fortune 1000 and Midmarket 24/7 across 20-plus SAP skill sets. And while our projects tend to be technical in nature, we have HANA, UX, SolMan. We likewise provide based SAP functional business processes and PMO services. Here's a list of actually some of the services that we offer. Today, clearly we'll be talking about technical monitoring and solution management. And here is a list of some of the customers that we work with, and are currently working with. Pull that up. Great. So actually, we are going to start off. We want to be able to answer as many questions as possible. So if you look in the bottom left-hand corner in the chat box, feel free to ask any questions, and they will be answered by Jereme at the end. Any critiques or comments, we'll be able to give those to you at the end as well. Everybody will be receiving a full edited audio, video version of this. So if there's any glitches or problems, rest assured you will be receiving the full presentation. All right, so let's get to it. Our speaker today is Jereme Swoboda. Jereme is an experienced SAP SolMan and Netweaver consultant focusing on proactive technical monitoring of SAP and non-SAP systems, supporting critical business processes. He's got a tremendous amount of experience pairing real-world scenarios with SolMan technical monitoring capabilities. He's an expert at collecting requirements, creating a monitoring strategy, and then putting those strategies to work. He's also had the opportunity to work for platforms for companies large and small, integrating SolMan 7.1. And before we start, we just want to get a lay of the land and see who we have and what are some of the concerns, so Jereme will be able to address those. So feel free to take a look at the poll questions that we have and answer them. So the first poll question is, which areas of technical monitoring have you implemented? System monitoring, integration monitoring, and user experience monitoring, job and BI monitoring, or all of the above. And I'll give everybody a couple. Everybody's starting to fill it in right now. We have a lot of system monitoring. Jereme can probably see that as well. Good amount of all the above too. So, all right, a couple more seconds on that poll question. And we'll move on to the next poll question. And the big question, everybody's talking about it at Sapphire as well, are you planning on upgrading to SolMan 7.2 when it's released? This is interesting. It looks like it's pretty even. We'll give people a little bit more time. And I see some people are in the chat box giving comments as well too, which is great because we'll be responding to those. Cool. All right, let's get it started. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jereme Swoboda. Jereme, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you for attending my presentation today. Today, we will be discussing technical monitoring and the top tips and tricks that that I've developed and NIMBL as a company have developed over the years, and the many implementations of technical monitoring we've done for a number of different clients. So to start off, we will just be doing a high-level overview of technical monitoring and its functionalities that are provided. And keep in mind this will be a high level, kind of expecting that anyone attending the presentation today has an understanding, at least a decent understanding of technical monitoring and what it is capable of. And then we'll be getting into my tips and tricks for preventing alert flooding and for the actual refinement process for the technical monitoring alerts. So to start off, as you all are aware, and we had some good responses there on which parts of technical monitoring you have active. As everyone should know, technical monitoring as a whole is just a title. Within that, there's a number of other tools. As you can see here, a few of them listed: end user experience monitoring, integration monitoring, which includes PI monitoring and message flow monitoring. You have system monitoring that's not listed here, which looks like most everyone has implemented. And from my experience, that's the first thing that everybody tackles first. And then they move on to job and BI monitoring, like you see here, for monitoring background jobs, or BI monitoring to monitor the specific areas of BI monitoring, like process chains and queries. And then you also have Solution Manager self-monitoring for monitoring itself. Within those tools, SAP has provided a couple of different tools that we're going to highlight quickly. They provide a live monitoring dashboard for looking at the current statuses of alerts that I've seen clients use to display at a help desk, so everyone within the room can see the current status and health of all the systems that they're monitoring. Really, technical monitoring is designed to help increase your service level response times. So anytime you have an outage, you have a system that goes down, you can quickly respond to that. Helping you eliminate daily health checks. A lot of clients spend many hours every day going through a specific health check they've developed to validate the health of a system. Technical monitoring can eliminate those requirements. So definitely a great tool for proactively monitoring your systems. A lot of the pain points it addresses, right? Do you have any PI channels that have failed within via interface monitoring? Any host level metrics, like if your disks fill up or you have transaction logs that fill up for a database. Really, SAP has provided technical monitoring to handle a majority of the issues that people run into, and then also giving you capabilities to monitor more than that, creating custom metrics and alerts to monitor your specific requirements. Two of the primary tools that will be essential to the refinement process of technical monitoring, or really any alert within the technical monitoring space, is the system monitoring graphic display. So it's essentially a UI that SAP has provided that gives you the current status of all of your alerts. And it also allows you to quickly access the historical data of any of the managed objects that you're monitoring. So any data over time that it's collecting, you can actually see historically over the past days, weeks, or even months, depending on how much data you store within Solution Manager. Then you have your alert inbox. This is a place where Solution Manager tracks all of your alerts and keeps that historical data as well. How many alerts have been triggered? When did the status go back to green? When did it go to red? Allows you to confirm that alert whenever the issue is resolved. Essentially a tracking system for any of the alerts that come in, which I use heavily anytime I'm refining alerts. Anytime I'm refining alerts for clients, and it's really one of those day-to-day tools for checking which alerts are being triggered and which ones are most critical, as it also gives you the number of alerts that have triggered. So if you have an alert that's triggered a couple thousand times, obviously that's one that is a false alarm and needs to be remediated so that you're not sending thousands of emails. So definitely two tools that are essential to the refinement process. This is a screenshot of the system monitoring dashboard. I know it's small and you can't really see all the details, but I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It gives you two different displays: a graphical display showing all your managed objects and their current statuses based on category. And then on the right, you have a tree view where you can see all of the alerts and which managed objects they're assigned to and their current status. Here is the alert inbox. Here you would see your list of all of your alerts, how many times they've been triggered, when they were triggered, their current status. Definitely a variety of different information about your alerts that are being triggered. So a little bit of background on system monitoring. SAP has broken up all of your different alerts into different templates. So you have a template based on category. You've got hosts. Sorry, not category. You have templates based on manage object type. So you've got your hosts, your databases, your technical systems, and your technical instances. Within those different manage object types, you have your different applications. So if it's a database, you've got your SQL, you've got your Oracle databases. Under hosts, you've got Linux, HPUX, Windows, and then within your applications is where you can monitor any SAP or non-SAP applications. To answer Mustafa's question, it can monitor SAP and non-SAP applications. The best way to determine which ones it can monitor is to jump right into technical monitoring configuration under transaction SolMan setup and take a look at which templates you have out there. SAP also has lots of information out there under SCN, underneath the help, SAP support help pages, and you can go out there and find out what else it can monitor. SAP does continuously update that, so there's always new applications that it can monitor. So again, here you can see within a template, you've got different products you can monitor, which I just highlighted. You can send updates based on specific alerts. So within an alert, you have basically who's alerted, who gets that email, and that is broken up into different categories. So you got availability, exceptions, performance, and configuration. And then alerts can also be assigned to a work mode, which I'll highlight shortly as a way to eliminate false alarms. The other primary component is a metric. So a metric is what's actually collecting data. It has a threshold built into it. So when a specific value is exceeded or fallen below, depending on the type, you will get an email alert. So really the metric is where you're going to spend a majority of your time when you're refining alerts to eliminate false alarms. You've got a number of different things you can change in there. You can change your threshold type. So there's about 8 different threshold types that you can use, but they do have to match the type of data that's being monitored. But there is always a way, especially the counter threshold, one of the key threshold types I use to eliminate false alarms, which I'll explain here shortly. You can also customize your collection interval within a metric. So how frequently does Solution Manager check that data set to see if the threshold's been exceeded? Here's a screenshot of the template maintenance step within the technical monitoring configuration of transaction SolMan_setup. So this is what I just mentioned, where you can go in and you can take a look and see where what products you can monitor with technical monitoring. We're going to get into the demonstration here shortly. I don't think there'll be enough time because what I really want to focus on is the refinement process and how to prevent false alarms and alert flooding. Because I know what I've experienced with clients is the number one thing that people run into is they activate monitoring and they get thousands of emails a day. And they wonder what to do, right? You're getting all these emails every day and it's overwhelming. How do I manage all of these alerts? How do I eliminate all of these emails? It seems like, I already have, maybe my basis team is only 4 or 5 people strong, and I just don't have time. I've got all these other systems to manage. So how do I eliminate all these false alarms so that I can use this tool to meet the requirements of my end users, my business, to ensure the systems are up and running? So one of the number one things when I come on site and help someone is, really think ahead. What alerts do I really need? Go through all of your alerts and find out which ones are most important to you and keep that to the minimum. The more alerts you have active, the more you're going to have to refine and the more you're going to have to work on, until they get to a point where they meet the specific system requirements. So that's number one. Don't activate everything right off the bat. Go through, develop a RACI matrix, which is one of my other tips that, I'll show you one of the documents, one of the RACI matrices I've developed. So essentially make a list of all of your alerts and decide which ones you want active and really keep it to the most important. Until you've had the time and develop the expertise to add additional alerts. Keep it to the most critical. Once you've done that, go through all of those alerts and go look at those metrics and adjust them to meet what you think your system requirements are. So, if you know the performance of your system is a little bit, doesn't quite meet that threshold and you need to bump up that threshold, then increase it. If you know that it's kind of common that you get 10 or 15 short dumps a day and it's not a big deal for you, then bump up the threshold for monitoring short dumps. Really the whole idea is that you adjust the thresholds to meet your systems. So doing that before you even activate can really alleviate and eliminate a lot of those false alarms, so you're not spending a lot of time refining those alerts. So some of my tips for preventing alert flooding is assign each managed object its own unique template. So do this slowly. You don't want to go and create 20 different templates right off the bat, because if you have one change you have to make to all of those templates, then you're going to give yourself a lot of work. So normally I start with one template and get all of the alerts refined within that to meet all of the managed objects that alert is assigned to, and then copy them out. So once you've got that central template meeting your system's requirements, but then you come along and now your ECC system, you want to monitor some specific queues that only exist in that system, well then you can copy that custom template out and start creating custom metrics that are specific to that specific system. Like I mentioned, customize metric thresholds. Get in there anytime you see that a threshold is incorrect, go ahead and change it. Collection interval. A lot of times I run into a situation where a availability alert is triggering false alarms, and the root cause is that it's triggering a data collection every minute. And sometimes there's enough network lag that, because a lot of times it uses a ping, it just pings the system. So if there's network lag and it doesn't respond quick enough, well, you're going to get a false alarm. So maybe that 1 minute frequency is way too frequent. So if you bump that up to 5 minutes, you can eliminate that threshold there as well. So taking a look at that collection interval and bumping it up can be a good way to eliminate a false alarm. And a lot of times what I do when I first set up alerts, especially if it's a dev and QA, I bump up all the availability thresholds to 10 or 15 minutes, whatever is acceptable to the client. And then even production, go to 5 minutes, because 1 minute really is very frequent, but definitely up to you and whatever meets your requirements. The other big one is, deactivating email alerts on what you don't need. So that goes back to only activating the most important alerts. Another good way to prevent alert flooding is using work modes. So SAP with, I believe it's support pack 12 of Solution Manager 7.1, they have provided a new ability to change thresholds during different times of the day using a work mode. So essentially a work mode, if you're not familiar with it, allows you to specify a specific time of day for a specific system. You've got different categories of work modes. So like if there's an outage, or not an outage, if you have maintenance where you're going to take the system down, or that a system's performance is going to, decrease from noon to 2 o'clock every, 5 days a week, every day of the working week. Well, you can set up a work mode for ECC only from noon to 2, and then assign that work mode to a specific metric, and then change that threshold, bumping it up, so that when your performance goes down, you won't get an alert during that time. I realize work modes can be a little confusing. SAP has lots of documentation out there, but if you look into work modes and get them created and test them out with dev, they really can be a lifesaver when you have metrics that are, they're going off at the same time every day. You can bump up that threshold for that time of day. You can also assign work modes to templates. You can change the event type. So within system monitoring, you have your alerts, and then you have the metrics assigned to them. Well, you can have as many metrics as you want assigned to one alert. By default, if a single metric within that alert turns red, you're going to get an email. That's using the worst case event type. There's also a best case event type. So if you have a case where you've got 6 different metrics assigned to an alert and only one of them goes off on a regular basis, well, if you change it to best case, it would take all of the metrics going to a red threshold in order to get an alert. There's also an average case. That's obvious, right? If you have 3 out of 5 that go red, you're going to get an alert. So changing that event type can be critical as well to refining alerts and eliminating false alarms. That event type can be found under you have to go into expert mode within technical monitoring, and then within there you go to the events, alerts, or metrics, events, and alerts hierarchy tab. That's where you can see all of the alerts, their assigned metrics, and the event built into that. Also, keep in mind you can always create a custom metric or a variant for a specific alert. So let's say you have you've got 5 different disks on a host, and on a regular basis, one of those disks are always at 95% full. You always expect them to be at 95% full, and there's really not, and you don't expect it to grow, and you effectively don't want to monitor it. You can always create a custom metric and eliminate monitoring that specific disk. Or you could create another metric that only monitors that one disk, and that way you can bump up the threshold, allowing you to keep the other metric at the proper thresholds to ensure you're still monitoring those 3 other disks at a 80% threshold, or you can monitor the 4th one that's always at 95 at a higher threshold so you're not sending alerts. So really analyzing what it is you're alert monitoring and looking at, is there a way I can adjust this metric or create a custom one to eliminate monitoring that specific use case that's setting the alert off. One of the other ways that it's usually a deliverable that we help clients produce, because one of the hardest things is just tracking all of your alerts, right? You have a lot of alerts out there. If you've got 10 different production systems and you've got 10 different custom alerts per managed object, you now suddenly have a lot of templates and a lot of alerts, and navigating through that and checking to see what's active and what changes are made all within the template maintenance step can be difficult and can be time consuming because you have to wait for all your pages to load. So developing a racing matrix.
Hey, Jereme, I'm sorry to jump in real quick. We had a quick question. We're going to save all the questions to the end, but we had a question about, it may have come in a little bit earlier, of what does no work mode configured means?
So
was that from a previous slide?
So we were just talking about work modes, and I think what they're referring to is they're asking about within a template or within a metric, you have an option to say no work mode configured. Mm-hmm. Really it's essentially turning it off so there's no work mode configured for that template or that alert.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
If you can give me 1 minute, it looks like my internet has actually gone down. I apologize. I'll be right back.
Sure. In the meantime, I would like to let everybody know about some stuff that we have coming up. We are actually going to be doing an SAP UX and HANA seminar series. NIMBL and ASUG were pairing together to do a UX seminar series that went over personas and Fiori, splash and builds, and different types of design strategy that we did, sold out in Chicago and sold out in Atlanta. Moving forward, we're going to add HANA to that. We're going to be doing a 2-day session. So we will be in LA, we will be in Portland, we will be in Boston, and then later on we'll be in Toronto. So if anybody would like further information on that, just type info into the chat box, and I can send you information as to when we will be in your area and what we will be doing with that. I see some people are actually looking for it as well. So yeah, just go ahead and type info in there. And again, this is a back-to-back seminar series, 2 days, that will give you full hands-on exercises, live demonstrations, best practices, real-world examples, and as it says in the poster, anybody who's been wanting to learn how to implement and optimize SAP UX functionality and or Business Suite on HANA. This is a great seminar for you too. And one of the questions was, can you register for just 1 day? And actually, yeah, you can. You can either pick, if you just want to do HANA, you can do HANA. If you just want to do UX, you can do UX. And you can see that the information is below. This will be for June 6th and 7th in Los Angeles, June 9th and 10th in Portland, and June 21st and 22nd in Boston.
Okay, I'm back. I apologize. Luckily, I have a hotspot.
All good, brother.
Yep.
I kept them on with the UX seminar series. So
thank you.
Yeah, so feel free to go back to your slides, and we'll continue right along.
All righty. I apologize, everyone. So you know, as far as the work modes, I believe if I'm thinking of what you're asking is, you know, you can say no work mode configured, and essentially turns it off so no work modes can be configured for that specific alert. Hopefully I'm answering your question. You can always send me an email later too with a picture of what you're describing, and we can look at it. I can answer your question directly. Okay, so the RACI matrix. This can be critical to the management of alerts because there are so many. So essentially, it's just a list of all of the alerts that are active and who's responsible for them. And then if you make any adjustments to an alert, say, you know, I change the threshold, you know, you can take note of that. That way, anyone can just jump right into this Excel spreadsheet and take a look at what alerts are active and who made a change last to it. Because I've had clients directly ask that, and actually that was one of the questions someone asked me at the conference, the admin conference in Vegas just a few months ago. How do we track all of this? There's, you know, too much, and they asked if SAP had a tool, and unfortunately I'm not aware of it in 7.1. I've gotten my feet wet with 7.2. You know, we've got into our lab, and you know, we're doing upgrades and we're doing a lot with it. I haven't seen anything quite yet like the RACI matrix, but within a template you can. And
I'm sorry, Jeremy, last one. If you could just explain what RACI means. We had a couple questions as to what RACI stands for.
Essentially just who is responsible. It's just a list. RACI matrix can be used for anything. It's a list of different things and who is responsible for it, essentially. What does RACI stand for? Good question. Responsibility assignment matrix.
Great, thanks.
Yep. So this is just you know, a tool that we've come across in the years of doing technical monitoring projects that is a good way of managing what's out there and what changes you've made, essentially. Which I'll show you. I'm going to share my screen here in a second, and I'll show you a copy of what we've developed. So next, I kind of want to go over the process of refining false alarms. I have a flow chart I'm going to share my screen and show you. But really, essentially what it starts off with is when I get an email, is it a false alarm? And what do I do from there, right? Which alerts are being triggered? So these are all questions you can ask yourself. And I actually just posted a blog about this process. I've been meaning to do it. I wanted to get it out, so I got it out today, out on SCN, and we'll get it to you at the end of the presentation, the link. But essentially, all these questions are in it, so you don't have to write it all down or anything, but you'll get a document of this anyways. But essentially, the questions you should ask yourself when you get a false alarm to take you through the process of refining the alerts. So, is it a false alarm or not? Because if it's not a false alarm, right, you just need to fix the issue in your system. If it is a false alarm, what do we do then? Now we need to go into Solution Manager. And what changes should we make first to ensure that we're not eliminating the effectiveness of our alerts? What is the metric collecting data for? What is the specific data set that you're monitoring? How is that data being collected? Is that data correct? If the data is correct, what does the historical data tell you? You can go into the technical monitoring UI and take a look at the historical data that I mentioned earlier, and look at what are my daily values throughout the week, previous weeks. That'll give me information on on what thresholds I should change it to. So let's move on to the flow chart that I created. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know when you can see that. Can you see my screen now, Jake? Jake?
Yeah, sorry. I thought I was muted myself. Yeah, I can see your screen. You're all good. Okay.
So, quickly, this is the RACI matrix I developed. Really just a series of questions, and depending on your answer, what's the next step, right? So the first thing that's going to happen, you're going to get multiple alerts, right? You're going to analyze that alert. So you're going to go into the alert inbox. You're going to open up the alert and take a look at which metric triggered, right? Because we talked about earlier how you can have 5 different metrics assigned to an alert. Well, if only one of those triggered, we need to look at that one specific metric. So looking at that metric, looking at the data that it triggered off of, and you knowing your system, is the alert legitimate or not? So let's start with the no. So if it's not a false alarm, what's the next step? You need to ask yourself, can the issue be resolved in the system? If this is, because I've run into clients where it's an issue that no one really notices, and it's really not a big deal, and they don't want to invest the time in fixing it. So, but if it can be fixed, the obvious question is you're going to fix it in the system, and you shouldn't get the alert anymore, right? Maybe deactivate it until you get it fixed. If it cannot be fixed in the system, or you just don't want to because you don't have the bandwidth and it's not that big of a deal, do you want the metric still? Should we deactivate the metric for that specific manage object? If you do want to deactivate it, if it's yes, then you're going to want to go create a custom template. So if it's a specific host if it's only one specific host as it has a specific issue, we'll go create a custom metric for that host, or not metric, custom template for that host, deactivate the metric, and then apply and activate that template for just that single host. That way you're still keeping all of your good alerts that are not triggering false alarms on all of your other hosts. If the answer is no, right, then, and you want to keep that specific metric, then you could also go try changing that event type. So let's say if like we talked about, you've got 5 different metrics assigned to an alert. You still want to keep that metric active for that manage object. So if you change the event type to best case, you're effectively requiring all of those metrics to turn red before you get an alert. And that would be the final step that you would have if it is legitimate and you want to keep the metric active. So more often than not, though, you're going to find that the answer is yes. Is this a false alarm? Yes. So what do we do? What should we look at first? Take a look at the data, right? In the UI provided within technical monitoring or within the alert inbox, look at that data. Is it correct? Is there something off? You know, if the data is not correct, then we need to look into Solution Manager. We need to go to Manage System Config. We need to look at STPI, STAPI. Do those components need to be patched in the managed system? You know, is there an issue with data collection? Are the extractors failing? There could be a number of things, but, you know, I can't go too far into that. But you essentially need to use your basis knowledge to go down the path of, you know, how is the data being collected and is it correct or not? And how do I, you know, where is it failing? Where do I fix it, right? So the next question you ask yourself, is the threshold correct? If the threshold is not correct, then if you already have the information, then go change it, bump it up a little bit. If you're not sure, and it's like a performance metric, so, you know, if it's a performance of dialogue processes within your ECC system, and you don't really know the exact values every day, well, you go into that the user interface within technical monitoring and look at that historical data, and where is it day to day? Maybe we should bump it up right above that normal value, and now you're going to eliminate that false alarm. So keep in mind when you're changing thresholds, do it a little bit at a time. If you go too fast, you're going to eliminate the value of that alert, because now it's not going to send you an alert when it's, you know, when the response time is at 4,500 seconds, which is really slow, and you've set it to 6,000. Well, that's kind of extreme. You'd want to start slower than that, right? So the other answer could also be sometimes. Sometimes, you know, the threshold's correct. Other times it's not. So you've got a few options in that case, right? You can use the work mode to change the threshold during different times of the day, right? So you create a work mode for a specific managed object, so one specific instance on your ECC system, and set that for, you know, whatever the period of time is, and then go to that metric and update, you know, assign that threshold, that work mode to the metric, and then bump up the threshold so that now your thresholds are higher from during that period of time for that one specific instance. Your other option is to create a custom metric for that specific managed object. So, you know, like we did earlier to deactivate a alert for one specific managed object, you could do the same thing but bump up the threshold and still keep that alert effective for all your other managed objects, but bumping it up just for that one specific managed object. Hopefully that makes sense. And then the last one would be change the threshold type to counter. I do this a lot. So a counter threshold type allows you to essentially monitor. So the best way to explain it is it's counting the number of times the threshold is exceeded over a period of time before it sends you an alert. So within this threshold type, you set your threshold values. So what value does it go? Does it exceed when it goes to yellow? What value does it exceed when it goes to red? Just like any other threshold. But then below that, you have the number of times it has to be exceeded, and then the amount of time it's looking at. So if I wanted to, so like for instance, if I see a performance threshold that spikes, you know, 4 times or 1 time every hour, let's say that. So it's a performance metric, and the threshold that gets exceeded once in an hour, but then it goes back down. Well, if this metric collects data 4 times in an hour, to eliminate that false alarm, I would set the counter threshold, set my thresholds, whatever they are, and then say it needs to exceed it twice in 1 hour before I get an alert, or 4 times, whatever you think. to meet your specific situation. Essentially, you're telling it to ignore a single spike because it's spontaneous and it's random, and you can't change your threshold. You can't use a work mode because it's random. I see that with Java a lot. You see a random spike, sometimes at 2 in the morning, sometimes at 8 in the morning, sometimes at 5, and it's always different every day. Well, work mode won't handle that, but the counter threshold can, because it's always using that evaluation method of only sending alert if the values exceeded a certain number of times within a certain amount of time. You can do minutes, you can do hours as well. So back up to, is the threshold correct? If your answer is yes, the threshold's correct and none of these other options are going to help, can the metric parameters be adjusted to match the requirements? So at that point, you can look at the parameters within the metric. So within the metric, each metric has its own sets of parameters. So essentially, what data is being monitored, you're going to have to look at each one. They're all different. But look at those parameters available. Like the example I gave earlier, where you've got one disk that exceeds 95% all the time, but then the others, are always down at 80, never exceed 80%. Well, that's where you could, create a custom metric with different parameters to monitor, that other scenario. Would changing the event type help, right? So that's the next question. If it's no, then would changing the event type help? So changing it to that average case or that best case. If it will, change the event type. If it won't, do other metrics monitor the same data? So, sometimes you've got 5 different ways of monitoring alert, and you've spent tons of time trying to, create work modes, use the counter threshold, changing your event type, and you're still getting this false alarm, and it's really frustrating, and you just don't have time to deal with it. It happens all the time. It's just kind of the way things go. Unfortunately, nothing ever is perfect, right? So sometimes you just have to deactivate it. But I would only go to that if I had other metrics that I had available. And a lot of times you do, right? Within one alert, you've got 5 different ways of monitoring the availability of a system. Well, is it okay if we lose one? Sometimes it is okay. And if that's the case, then, deactivate it. Sometimes that's the best, quickest option. Especially if time is a big deal for most people. And, if you've only got 4 or 5 people in your team and you're already overwhelmed with everything else, and you just want a legitimate alert and all the other metrics are working fine, then, sometimes you have to just deactivate it. And then the final option is open a ticket with SAP, right? If you've gone through everything, this is the only metric you have to monitor the specific use case, and you don't have any other options out there, well, the last thing you do is open a ticket with SAP and have them help you resolve it, right? So that's essentially the refinement process that I've developed and I use with clients. And you kind of do that with every single alert. But if you follow all of the other steps that I gave you, starting slow, only, adjusting thresholds right off the bat before you activate them, that will help, minimize the amount of times you have to go through this process, right? Because, again, time is important, and you don't want to have to do this over and over. And that's the other reason why I start with the minimum number of templates. Assign one template to all of those managed objects, and make adjustments until you absolutely have to start creating templates that are specific and unique to each managed object. Moving on to the RACI matrix. So this here is an example of a RACI matrix. So if we go all the way over, right at the bottom, we can see all our tabs. I've got a tab for HANA. I've got a Sybase SQL Anywhere database, Oracle, Windows, right? So we've got our databases, our hosts. We have our technical systems, right, all the way through everything. We even have SMPs because we can monitor SMP 3.0, we can monitor SMP 2.3, we can monitor gateway. There's a lot of different things. So essentially what I did is copy out all of the alerts assigned to that template, and then I put in the category, the severity, whether or not the alert is active, and then whether or not notifications are active, who the alert sends to, and then a notes column for any changes that are made. I also have the template name. So here we only have a prod and a dev template. So that's the other tip I don't think I ever said. Don't turn on all of the same monitoring for dev and QA as you have for prod. Just start with prod. If you don't need dev and QA right away, get your alerts set up for prod first and then move on to dev and QA. If you absolutely need alerts for dev and QA, stick to availability only. But this is essentially the RACI matrix. It's not as complicated as it sounds, but it is a huge time saver and something I would highly recommend. Moving back to the slides, some of the reasons, and some of this we probably have already talked to. I tend to get ahead of myself when I'm talking about this stuff, thinking ahead, right? Reasons for customizing alerts, right? When false alarms are being triggered on a regular basis and you're getting overwhelmed with alerts. The more that happens, the more people stop paying attention, and the more Outlook starts automatically putting your stuff in the clutter box, which is not what you want, right? You want people to pay attention. To prevent alerts during peak business times or even planned downtime. So that work mode is more than just about refining alerts. You can also use it for when a system goes down. Not down, I apologize. When the system's down for maintenance. So if you have scheduled maintenance windows, you can set up work modes for the scheduled times when you know the system's going to be down, and you essentially turn off the alerts during those times for that one specific managed object. Work modes can be created on any schedule you want. SAP has really developed them. They're a lot better after SP10 or SP12. They're significantly better. A lot more options. You can say from midnight to 2 in the morning on every third Wednesday of the month, the system goes down, and the work mode is only active during that time. One of the big things is think outside the box. All these things I've discussed are really just things we've come up with, that I've come up with just by sitting down and working on issues and hashing it out and thinking about what else can we do, right? What other options do we have to resolve it? And I'm sure there'll be things that I haven't thought of yet, and there's always something new. It happened at the last admin conference. I was talking about all this, and this lady had a question, and I didn't quite have an answer, and this other guy in the audience thought of something, and he spoke up, and it was great. It's good community thought, right? Create custom metrics and alerts to meet your needs. There's lots of different ways you can monitor things. You've got CCMS that's still out there and active in Netweaver. So if you find there's an alert in CCMS that's not in technical monitoring, well, you can pull the status of CCMS MTEs. I'm actually looking at doing it for a client right now because they asked me to do something in technical monitoring, and I can't find a way to do it within technical monitoring, at least until 7.2. So I'm finding a way to do it within CCMS just to meet their needs for now. You can create custom metrics from scratch. You will need a developer. The link to it is via the transaction MAI_tools. At SP13, SAP activated this, or 12, they activated this transaction. In the past, you had to get to a lot of these, and in a lot of the tools within it, I think you still have to activate the service within transaction SICS. But you can create a custom metric from scratch. You just have to create a program within the managed system for Solution Manager to execute, and then it's going to look for whatever data it finds and send an alert based on whatever it is. I know that's super high level, but that would be essentially the process. But it is possible. So to summarize everything, one of the things I like to do is use the system monitoring UI to monitor systems health, right? You can put it up on a screen to monitor a system and validate its health on a day-to-day basis. Use the alert inbox to track your alerts. Again, it gives you that number of alerts that are triggered per alert. Use that to prioritize which alerts you need to work on and customize. If you get 5,000 in a day, clearly that one needs to be fixed first before the one that triggers 40 times a day, right? So using that, confirming those alerts once you think they're fixed, and then log in the next day. Did it come back? Should I make another change? Should I change the event type? Going through that, the process that I provided will help you a lot. Using CCMS, like I mentioned, implement multiple templates for each system as needed, especially as needed. Keep that in mind. Don't go create 20 templates because you're just generating a lot of work for yourself. Try to make changes that will work for all of your systems in one template, and only copy that template into more unique templates that will be per managed object when you absolutely have to. Otherwise, you're just generating a lot of work for yourself. If you don't need to create custom metrics and you can live on one template, live on one template because it'll save you a lot of time. So I think that's it.
All right, great. Jereme, great presentation, and a lot of great back and forth, too. I want to thank everybody on the chat box, too. We have a lot of questions that we'll answer coming up, and we want to end, before we get to the questions, just 2 more poll questions, just to see how we can further help out anybody moving forward. So the next question is, if a consultant isn't in the budget for implementation as far as your company is concerned, would it be helpful to have a 2 or 3 day KT session on refining alerts? And obviously we can get in touch with you however you'd like, if that's something you are interested in, or any other information we can send you. Jereme, a KT session is?
So a KT session, we would go into a lot of the things we talked about today, but in actual detail, hands-on, together, go through everything, answer the specific questions, try to fix a few of the ones you have, right?
Oh, cool.
Give you hands-on knowledge, not actually doing it all, but just giving you knowledge on the knowledge transfer, teaching you how to do it.
Great. Then everybody who's responding yes, we'll make sure that we reach out to you just to see whether or not that's something that you're looking to do, and we'll get you all the information from and correct me if I'm wrong, Jereme, from a technical monitoring standpoint to a SolMan 7.1 and all the alerts in between. Does that sound about right?
Correct. Yeah, everything within that, BI monitoring, PI monitoring, BobJ,
everything
all of it. Yep.
Oh, BobJ as well? Cool. Awesome. Great. I'll give people a couple more seconds because a lot of people are filling that out. A lot of people saying yes. Great. And then finally, just pretty much general question. Would you like more information on Solution Manager 7.2? Everybody's big on that, it seems. We are getting a flood of responses on that. Cool.
And a little highlight, look out for my SAP Press e-bite on upgrading to 7.2 when 7.2 is released.
All right. And then also, I'm going to make sure that everybody gets, if you'll give me 2 seconds. I'm going to, Jereme also has a blog. I'm going to copy and paste that right now into the chat box. So if you want to explain this blog right now that I'm putting out, this is going to be to everybody.
Sure. So this is essentially, all the questions that you would have to ask yourself to go through that refinement process, and it's a copy of that workflow, that flow chart that I created.
Yeah.
And that,
so sorry, go ahead.
Within that blog, right, I've also got lots of other articles out there. So there's more information beyond just this as well. Awesome.
And then we got all those responses in. As I mentioned before, we are doing our SAP UX HANA seminar series. Spoke about it earlier. So again, if anybody wants any more info on that, we got a lot of great responses. I was kind of chatting with people back and forth as to where we'll be and when we'll be there. Again, it's a 2-day seminar, but you can go to one if you'd like. If you're looking more for HANA, or you're looking for more for UX. We had a couple questions about PI and PO and BW. Any other information you're looking for, you can just let Jereme know. Or you can let us know as well too. But if you want to type info into the chat box, we'll get you all the information that you need. Here is all of Jereme's information. And Jereme will be getting back in touch with everybody who had asked. I think we also had a question about the flow chart that you showed. We'll make sure. And finally, before we get to the questions, as everybody's leaving, we'd love it if you filled out the comment box, and specifically what type of subjects you'd like NIMBL to cover in the future, whether you want more HANA or you want SolMan or UX or AMS services, anything. And we'd also like to know how you thought that we did on the webinar itself, and if there's any improvements or any suggestions that you have. So, and as I said before, everybody will be receiving a full audio presentation, fully edited. And now let's go to the questions. Now, some of these questions Jereme may have answered. Mustafa asked, is monitoring only specific to SAP systems? I believe you asked that. You already answered that. And now we're going to, let's see. So Jennifer wanted to know, how do we find out if a specific application can be monitored by Solution Manager?
The fastest way is to log into Solution Manager, go to transaction SolMan_WorkCenter, go to the technical monitoring configuration guided procedure, go to step 4 under template maintenance, and go right in and look for a template that can be assigned. Because if there's a template, you can monitor it. There's a couple SCM blogs from SAP out there, not blogs, wikis out there that have all the different things that you can monitor, and maybe not everything, but a lot of the difficult ones, monitoring BobJ, SMP, that's one of the harder ones. A lot of those are, anything outside of the box. But yeah, you can monitor quite a bit. You can monitor Microsoft products, SharePoint. There's quite a few things out there, but that would be the fastest way.
Cool. And the next one is going to be from Srini. It is it common to have to spend time customizing alerts to reduce false alerts?
It's very common. I mean, SAP does their best to provide alert, metrics by default that meet most systems requirements, but more often than not, they just don't, unfortunately, and you have to make some adjustments to meet your specific system's requirements because they're all different, right? And it's really impossible. And this is the case for all monitoring solutions. I've worked with some other ones, and really every time you've got to make some changes.
Cool. Let's see. Jeffrey asks, did you download the template information into MS Excel or manually enter it?
Manually, unfortunately. You can, within the template, in the template maintenance page for technical monitoring, you can export the entire template into an HTML web page, and that is easier to copy and paste out of. Either way, it has to be done manually, unfortunately, but doing it right from the WebDyn Pro is a lot more difficult. If you get it off the HTML, copying and pasting is faster.
Cool. And then Victor asks, that's actually a direct question, what are your thoughts on defining a metric owner that you coordinate changes with? Do you find it as a standard process or that it's a hindrance?
I've never done it that granular. I think doing it by the metric would be too granular. I think I've had clients do it by the manage object type. So if it's the database team manages the database alerts, host, and then SAP application, right? You could do it by application. So one team handles the ECC alerts, the other CRM. I've had them do it at that level. But that's as granular as I've seen. And understandably, some clients don't have a don't have a host team. They only have DBA or not even DBA. I've had smaller companies where their basis team does everything. And at that point, within the team, they broke it up, so, based on however they wanted. But it's definitely a good idea to break it up if you've got an issue with time. But really using the different tips that I've provided are the best way to minimize the amount of time. I guess having someone manage it would help eliminate people just going in and making changes without authorization, causing false alarms. And that's what's nice with the racing matrix. You can kind of log who made a change last.
Cool. And hopefully I'm pronouncing this one right. Philip asks, does template maintenance override the template for all managed objects?
Only if that template is assigned to multiple managed objects. If you've got one template on all of them, then yeah, if you make one change, and maybe I never explained a manage object. Hopefully everyone knows what that is, but a manage object is a specific host or a specific database or a specific instance or system. And so you can have one Windows host template assigned to every single Windows host in your landscape. And if that was the case and you made one change, it would make that change for all of them. You have to have unique templates per host, which I would never do per host unless you had to, but you could do dev, QA, prod, or non-prod and prod.
Cool. All right, man. And we have reached the end. We've reached the hour mark. Looks like we have answered all the questions. You're welcome, Philip. I saw that in the chat box. I want to thank everybody. We had a great turnout. There was a lot of great back and forth, too. A lot of great questions, a lot of great comments. I'm looking at some of the exit comments. And I want to say thank you for the kind words on that. And then definitely thanks to Jereme for a lot of great information. Moving forward, obviously we'll be continuing on our lecture series. Like I said before, we'd like to be able to cover as many subjects as possible, so feel free just to give us a shout out. And we will definitely be getting back in touch, whether it is on technical monitoring. We mentioned UX, we mentioned HANA, we had mentioned PIPO, and all the other services. Anybody who reached out to us in the chat box, we'll be sure to get you in touch with one of our leads to see how we can help out. Cool? All right. So again, thank you very much. Everybody have a great holiday weekend, and we look forward to people joining us for our next webinar. We'll send everybody information on that. Hopefully it's something that interests you. All right. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend.